Good evening, everyone. Very happy to see you this evening, and I would like to lay a foundation for this evening's lecture, which I find extremely fascinating. Our subject is dealing with death, discarnates, and malevolent spirits. It's dealing with the transition, a very major transition in our lives. We have two major events of great import to us, our entrance and our exit into and out of this world. So since we are dealing with matters that span octaves of heaven and octaves of hell, I wanted to invite you to establish your connection to Saint Michael the Archangel and the hosts of the Lord. And so I'm going to ask to have handed out to you right now our Archangel Michael cassette booklet. And this gives us a few invocations and calls we can make to the archangels. While you are receiving these, you can take out the booklet you already have, which is the Heart, Head, and Hand booklet. We'll establish our connection to our God presence, which you can see illustrated on the chart behind me, as we sing the God mantras. This is page 21, and it is the number 25. Light in the chest and the God presence of God. Visualize the white light as a great sphere, a sun presence in the chest cavity. Visualize the presence of God above you as you see it on the chart behind me, the upper figure. Feel your soul and your being here below connecting with the highest point of God in the cosmos and in your individual I Am presence. Feel the light descend, cascading as a mighty waterfall of light, as you visualize yourself enveloped in the white light and the intense energy and strength of this light as it cascades from the central sun into your being now as you give your love and devotion to God.
I
I'd like you to stand as we are going to address the 7 mighty archangels, tremendous beings of light, and before we sing to them, I'm going to give an invocation. Please stand.
Our Father, Mother God, how great Thou art. As above, so below, we invoke Thy name, I am that I am. Intensify Thy light in our hearts, even the light of the Christ, the only begotten Son of the Father, full of grace and truth. O Lord Jesus Christ, in Thy name, we invoke the glory, the Shekinah glory of the I am that I am. Descend into our souls, into our spirits, into our minds and hearts. Intensify now. We come for the quickening, O God. We come to be vessels of the Holy Spirit. Teach us now that this is indeed the temple of the living God and the Holy Grail. Therefore, infill us with Thy light, O great central sun. The line of the crystal cord from Thy center to our center is intact. Let light flow. Let the crystal cord intensify and increase. Let the power, wisdom, and love of our hearts flower now as the individual Christ self-awareness. Oh, the beauty of God. Oh, the wonder and wisdom of God. Oh, the power and the majesty. We are in awe of Thy presence in all creation. Elohim, hear our call in this hour for the healing of the nations, for the healing of our souls, for the union of our soul with the living God through Christ Jesus and our holy Christ self. We gather here in this city, O God, to commune with Thee, to be taught from Thee, to know Thee as the Lord, and to summon the 7 archangels, that war might cease and peace reign. O God, deliver us, and show us how to be Thy instruments, here and now and forever. This we call forth, and we accept it done this hour in full power. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and the Divine Mother. Amen.
I'd like to give you the opportunity to offer your individual prayers to God, summoning the 7 archangels and their hosts to accomplish the work that you call forth. Please pray as you will. We're going to give the Blue Cross, Blue Flame protection, which it is very important for you to be able to give, to know, to do it daily, if you will, once you understand everything that I'm going to be teaching you this evening. So this is foundational to our foray, if you will, into other planes.
Beloved,
Mighty, victorious presence of God, I am in thee. Thou immortal, undead flame of Christ's love within my heart. Holy Christ cells of all light-bearers of the world. Beloved great divine director, beloved Saint Germain, beloved Jesus the Christ, beloved Helios, beloved God Obedience, beloved El Moria, beloved Serapis Bey, beloved Goddess of Liberty, beloved Lord Lanto, beloved Mighty Victory, beloved Cyclopeia, beloved Lord Maitreya, beloved Lanello, the entire spirit of the Great White Brotherhood in the world, Mother, element of light, fire, air, water, and earth, in the name and by the power of the presence of God which I am, and by the magnetic power of the sacred fire vested in me, I invoke the mighty presence and power of the Ascended Master's Blue Flame Cross as an invincible shield of cosmic light substance, which shall act as a mighty pillar of blue flame protection in manifestation throughout my entire consciousness, being, and world, 24 hours a day. Oh, beloved, I am presence in the heart of all light, as I give the following decree 9 times, fulfilling the cosmic power of the 3 times 3. I make the sign of the cross and visualize its blazing reality and manifestation before me, behind me, to my left, to my right, beneath, above, and in the center of my form, marking the individualized focus of God's almighty I Am presence, descending as a mighty stream of radiant light energy, charged to do His holy will as God in manifestation in this world of form. This is where you make your individual calls for your personal protection by the archangels and for the protection of family, relatives, loved ones, friends, and then all the people of the entire world. Please do this individually.
Beloved, mighty I Am presence, in the name of divine justice and mercy, in the name of the Christ, in the name of the light of God that never fails, I say to all negative human karma, you have no power, your day is done. Be thou dissolved and consumed with the body of the earth forever. I am, I am, I am. By all God's light and love I know I am. The cosmic victory and power of light everywhere forever. Beloved, mighty I Am presence, in the name of divine justice and mercy, in the name of the Christ, in the name of the light of God that never fails, I say to all negative human karma, you have no power, your day is done. Be thou dissolved and consumed in the body of the earth forever. I am, I am, I am. By all God's light and love I know I am. The cosmic victory and power of light everywhere forever. Beloved, mighty I Am presence, in the name of divine justice and mercy, in the name of the Christ, in the name of the light of God that never fails, I say to all negative human karma, you have no power, your day is done. Be thou dissolved and consumed in the body of the earth forever. I am, I am, I am. By all God's light and love I know I am. The cosmic victory and power of light everywhere forever. Beloved, mighty I Am presence, in the name of divine justice and mercy, in the name of the Christ, in the name of the light of God that never fails, I say to all negative human karma, you have no power, your day is done. Be thou dissolved and consumed in the body of the earth forever. I am, I am, I am. By all God's light and love I know I am. The cosmic victory and power of light everywhere forever. Beloved, mighty I Am presence, in the name of divine justice and mercy, in the name of the Christ, in the name of the light of God that never fails, I say to all negative human karma, you have no power, your day is done. Be thou dissolved and consumed in the body of the earth forever. I am, I am, I am. By all God's light and love I know I am. The the cosmic victory and power of light everywhere, forever. Beloved, mighty I am presence, in the name of divine justice and mercy, in the name of the Christ, in the name of the light of God that never fails, I say to all negative human karma, you have no power, your day is done. Be thou dissolved and consumed in the body of the earth forever. I am, I am, I am. By all God's light and love I know I am. The cosmic victory and power of light everywhere, forever. Beloved, mighty I am presence, in the name of divine justice and mercy, in the name of the Christ, in the name of the light of God that never fails, I say to all negative human karma, you have no power, your day is done. Be thou dissolved and consumed in the body of the earth forever. I am, I am, I am. By all God's light and love I know I am. The cosmic victory and power of light everywhere, forever. Beloved, mighty I am presence, in the name of divine justice and mercy, in the name of the Christ, in the name of the light of God that never fails, I say to all negative human karma, you have no power, your day is done. Be thou dissolved and consumed in the body of the earth forever. I am, I am, I am. By all God's light and love I know I am. The cosmic victory and power of light everywhere, forever. Beloved, mighty I am presence, in the name of divine justice and mercy, in the name of the Christ, in the name of the light of God that never fails, I say to all negative human karma, you have no power, your day is done. Be thou dissolved and consumed in the body of the earth forever. I am, I am, I am. By all God's light and love I know I am. The cosmic victory and power of light everywhere, forever. I am presence, thou art master. I am presence, clear the way. Let thy light and all thy power take possession here this hour. Charge of victory's mastery, blaze with lightning, blaze thy substance into this thy form descend. That perfection and its glory shall blaze forth and earth transcend. I am presence, thou art master. I am presence, clear the way. Let thy light and all thy power take possession here this hour. Charge of victory's mastery, blaze with lightning, blaze thy substance into this thy form descend. That perfection and its glory shall blaze forth and earth transcend. I am presence, thou art master. I am presence, clear the way. Let thy light and all thy power take possession here this hour. Charge of victory's mastery, blaze with lightning, blaze thy substance into this thy form descend. That perfection and its glory shall blaze forth and earth transcend. I am presence, thou art master. I am presence, clear the way. Let thy light and all thy power take possession here this hour. Charge of victory's mastery, blaze with lightning, blaze thy substance into this thy form descend. That perfection and its glory shall blaze forth and earth transcend. I am presence, thou art master. I am presence, clear the way. Let thy light and all thy power take possession here this hour. Charge of victory's mastery, blaze with lightning, blaze thy substance into this thy form descend. That perfection and its glory shall blaze forth and earth transcend. I am presence, thou art master. I am presence, clear the way. Let thy light and all thy power take possession here this hour. Charge of victory's mastery, blaze with lightning, blaze thy substance into this thy form descend. That perfection and its glory shall blaze forth and earth transcend. I am presence, thou art master. I am presence, clear the way. Let thy light and all thy power take possession here this hour. Charge of victory's mastery, blaze with lightning, blaze thy substance into this thy form descend. That perfection and its glory shall blaze forth and earth transcend. I am presence, thou art master. I am presence, clear the way. Let thy light and all thy power take possession here this hour. Charge of victory's mastery, blaze with lightning, blaze thy substance into this thy form descend. That perfection and its glory shall blaze forth and earth transcend. I am presence, thou art master. I am presence, clear the way. Let thy light and all thy power take possession here this hour. Charge of victory's mastery, blaze with lightning, blaze thy substance into this thy form descend. That perfection and its glory shall blaze forth and earth transcend. In the name of the Christ, in the name of the mighty I am presence, I call to the entire spirit of the great white brotherhood and the world mother, to lock your cosmic circles and soar to the flame of thousands of suns of the great central sun, and blaze megatons of cosmic light, blue lightning rays and violet fire, in, through, and around all that is not of the light in my four lower bodies, my electronic belt, my heart chakra and all of my chakras, my entire consciousness, being, and world. In the name of the Christ, in the name of the mighty I am presence, I call to the entire spirit of the great white brotherhood and the world mother, to lock your cosmic circles and soar to the flame of thousands of suns of the great central sun, and blaze megatons of cosmic light, blue lightning rays and violet fire, in, through, and around all that is not of the light in my four lower bodies, my electronic
stars of the flame of thousands of suns of the great central sun, and blaze megatons of cosmic light, blue lightning rays and violet fire, in, through, and round all that is not of the light in my four lower bodies, my electronic belt, my heart chakra, and all of my chakras, my entire consciousness being and world. Guard, guard, guard us for the lightning of thy love. Guard, guard, guard us by thy grace of love. Guard, guard, guard us by thy secret power of light. Guard, guard, guard us by thy great and glorious night, and seal us forever in thy love and heart of light. Guard, guard, guard us for the lightning of thy love. Guard, guard, guard us by thy grace of love. Guard, guard, guard us by thy secret power of light. Guard, guard, guard us by thy great and glorious night, and seal us forever in thy love and heart of light. Guard, guard, guard us for the lightning of thy love. Guard, guard, guard us by thy grace of love. Guard, guard, guard us by thy secret power of light. Guard, guard, guard us by thy great and glorious night, and seal us forever in thy love and heart of light. Guard, guard, guard us for the lightning of thy love. Guard, guard, guard us by thy grace of love. Guard, guard, guard us by thy secret power of light. Guard, guard, guard us by thy great and glorious night, and seal us forever in thy love and heart of light. Guard, guard, guard us for the lightning of thy love. Guard, guard, guard us by thy grace of love. Guard, guard, guard us by thy secret power of light. Guard, guard, guard us by thy great and glorious night, and seal us forever in thy love and heart of light. Invincible protection of the light, I am. Invincible protection of the light, I command. Invincible protection of the light is mine each day. Invincible protection of the light through me forever holds sway. Invincible protection of the light, I am. Invincible protection of the light, I command. Invincible protection of the light is mine each day. Invincible protection of the light through me forever holds sway. Invincible protection of the light, I am. Invincible protection of the light, I command. Invincible protection of the light is mine each day. Invincible protection of the light through me forever holds sway. Invincible protection of the light, I am. Invincible protection of the light, I command. Invincible protection of the light is mine each day. Invincible protection of the light through me forever holds sway. Invincible protection of the light, I am. Invincible protection of the light, I command. Invincible protection of the light is mine each day. Invincible protection of the light through me forever holds sway.
Thank you. Please be seated. That is our pep rally for Archangel Michael and a New Age Mass. You're welcome to take out your notebooks, to take notes as I begin the formal part of my lecture. Death is something for which people, especially Christians, are ill-prepared. I am giving this lecture to you in great joy to be certain that you and your children and your loved ones will no longer be ill-prepared for this experience. The first thing you need to know when dealing with death is that death itself is not real. It's a name that is given to a process whereby the systems of the physical body shut down, the brain, the heart, and the rest following. But it is not a cessation of life or consciousness or the continuity of your soul. But death is a major change. Think of the most major change that has ever happened to you in this lifetime. Multiply it by 100, and you will begin to understand just how major is the transition we call death. This change is not that we become a non-person. It's not that you're going to heaven or you're going to hell. But it's that you no longer have a physical body. That is the major adjustment. And because you do not have that physical body, and you no longer reside in what we call the physical plane, this earthly plane, you can no longer build and plant and cultivate and sow and reap and harvest. During the change called death, you enter an interim period where you are preparing once again to be on the scene in physical embodiment in your next life. A small percentage of those people who make this transition enter the resurrection and the ascension because they have fulfilled their reason for being, balanced at least 51% of their karma, and have graduated from Earth's schoolroom to another. The vast majority of people, however, do return. So what does it mean to be in physical embodiment? It means that we have free will and that we can create. We can be co-creators with God and with one another. We can fulfill our desires. We can balance karma, both negative and positive. We can work change together for effective community action, using the laws of spiritual alchemy and physical chemistry and physics, and by the Holy Spirit. To be in physical embodiment when our course is not through in this world is the most desirable state. Some people who are in what has been called the New Age think that it doesn't matter whether you are in or out of embodiment. I want to disabuse all of us of this misconception, because believe me, it does matter that we are in physical embodiment. There are even Christians who say to me, why do you worry about death? Why do you worry about what's happening in the coming decade or nuclear war? When we die, we're all going to heaven with Jesus. Jesus is coming in his second coming. There's going to be a final Armageddon, perhaps a total war, and that is going to be the beginning of our true bliss. Well, the fact of the matter is that a nuclear war is not the entrance to spiritual glory and realms of light, nor is it the cessation of life on earth, nor does the second coming of Jesus Christ promise you that you will not have to reincarnate again. While we are here, then, we are intended to create for the good of our souls, for the good of our communities, our families, our nations, our planet. Every day the sun rises, we should have already determined what we will do of constructive purpose for the benefit of individuals and the planet as a whole. One reason people espouse causes is that they are setting in motion causes that will have effects. I'm talking about karma. Another word for cause is karma. When we set in motion good causes, good momentums, we reap the rewards of the effects that they bring to us and to all life. If we enter into these causes and projects with a spirit of service, of helping people, and of doing the will of God, we will accrue a momentum of good works. Thus, we can add rings to our tree of life. And what is our tree of life? It's our causal body. And by that momentum, we increase our self-mastery and our identity. This is your tree of life, and this is the great causal body. As you look at the lower figure in the chart, it is you today, seated or standing where you are. This is you in the idealized sense. You are surrounded by the flame of the Holy Spirit, that is the violet flame. It is surrounding you because you invoke it. It doesn't get there just by happenstance, because the violet flame is not native to this earth plane. It comes from God, from spiritual octaves, and so if we desire to have its blessings, we must call it forth. So we give decrees like the ones we just gave to invoke it. We also invoke this tube of light that surrounds us as a cylinder of white light for protection from all kinds of harm, not merely physical, but that which is unseen. You see the crystal cord that enters the top of your head. It actually begins in the heart of your I Am Presence, and it goes all the way back to the great central sun of the entire cosmos, which is called the sun behind the sun, the spiritual sun of being. So this tube of light looks rather like the trunk of a tree, and this looks like the branches. So we call it the tree of life, and you can see that there are color rings or bands. They are actually spheres. And so spheres of light surround the divine monad that is the God presence above you. It says in Scripture that one star differeth from another star in glory. This is your star above you, and it is the star of the presence of God, as God appeared to Moses and said, "This is my name forever, I am that I am." The reason that each one of us has a different star is because these color rings reflect 7 paths of service
that we can walk in fulfillment of our individual manifestation of the Christ. And so the blue, which is the flame we just invoked from Archangel Michael, gives us the will of God. It gives us the power of God. It gives us a momentum in leadership, in anything that requires energy. And usually those who are in heads of state, in the leadership in their hometowns, or even the heads of household, have a good supply in this ring of light. The green denotes healing, science, economics, music. This purple, combined with the gold, denotes the path of ministration and service, where you are ministering to life in any job or capacity, from the least to the greatest, wherever we are caring for people in some way. This is the violet flame, and it's the flame of the spiritual path, of the priesthood, of churches. It is also the flame of a spiritual alchemy and another aspect of science. It is also the color and the flame of the age of Aquarius, where we will have 2,000 years of an accentuation of this flame. The pink denotes every form of art, theater, drama, also music, and the expression of love in so many ways, such as compassion and caring for one another. This is the yellow sphere, and it shows learning, intelligence, wisdom, teachers, those who convey knowledge in many forms. The white ray is at the center, and it is the geometry of all life, whether it is architecture, the building blocks of atoms, whether it is genetics, everything that has to do with the creation and the manifestation of it. So what we see here is that what we do on earth that is positive and has a quality of our dedication, our selflessness, the works that we do to the glory of God and not to our own ego, the energy of these works every day will ascend to the appropriate vibration or color band. So each day that we are giving of ourselves and serving to set life free in any capacity, doing our jobs well, caring for our families, every thought and feeling we think, every act we do is God's energy. We perform our actions and deeds by the waterfall of light that comes down the crystal cord into our hearts. And when we receive that energy, it is a crystal clear stream of water of life, as John spoke of it in the book of Revelation. When we qualify it, we either qualify it with the purity of these colors and vibrations, or we qualify it in an opposite way, negatively, in avarice, greed, anger, fear, doubt, all of the lower vibrations. These vibrations are heavy, they're discordant, so they cannot ascend to our tree of life, our causal body. And therefore they go out and burden others, they burden ourselves, and we build what we call an electronic belt in our auras of heavy vibrations and heavy karma. And that karma will sit there until we turn our hatreds into loves, our hardness of heart into mercy and forgiveness, our warlike energies into peace. So that is how we make karma, by misusing God's energy. And that karma is cumulative throughout our lifetimes. So it's very important that we understand this process, because at the change called death, our opportunity to qualify energy comes to an end, and then we are experiencing the reaping of what we have sown, with no ability to go back and make amends, no opportunity to say I'm sorry or to say I love you when we didn't tell someone we should have told. No further opportunity to resolve our psychological problems with ourselves and our families. This is why physical incarnation is so important. Everything is in flux. Everything can change while we are here. We can make good. We can have a conversion to the Lord and Savior. We can have a conversion and turn around and sow good where we may have engaged in a life of crime. We can leave off our addictions. We can call to the hosts of the Lord to deliver us, and we can say to God, I want to spend the rest of my life every day and every moment serving you and helping those of your people who need my help. And so by this momentum of giving of ourselves, we increase our individual self-mastery.
We are gaining mastery over ourselves when we set aside the selfish, self-centered self and engage in dealing and helping others deal with their sorrows. So we also increase our identity, because this great causal body above you is really who you are. And that I am presence above you is really your divine self. And so as you increase your rings on your tree of life, you are increasing your identity and your God consciousness, because you have sent before you to heaven, and that is your heaven world, your good works. So as I've been saying, life in this physical earth plane is life in the world of cause. There's almost nothing that we do that is not setting up something in motion that is going to have ramifications. An idle word, a careless remark may make someone depressed for a day or a week. We have set up a cause, it is in motion, and it is going to cycle through that person. Or we may bring joy and comfort or learning or some nugget of truth to someone that gives them a burst of awareness. That is a cause we've set in motion. It will ripple on, and that joy will affect others. So we begin to see that we are absolutely responsible for what we think, feel, say, and do. Now, while we are in physical embodiment, here, as you see yourself as the lowest figure in the chart, you are actually standing in direct polarity with the highest levels of the spirit cosmos. This can be illustrated with this pointer. If you are here below in the physical and your I am presence is here, the center figure in the chart being the presence of the living Christ. So if you turn this, you can see that you can bring all of God down to the physical octave, and all of you that is down here can also be a part of that God. That is what it means to be in that relationship to God. So we are occupying now the lowest vibrating levels of the matter cosmos in the dense bodies that we wear. And our goal is to attain reunion with the highest levels of the spirit cosmos. So this lecture is all about how do we get there. Upon the transition that is called death, you experience a life review. This is conducted before a body of 7 beings of light, our brothers and sisters who have gone before us and have been in the octaves of light, of light for tens of thousands of years. They are magnificent God-free beings. There are 7 in number who minister to us on earth, and they are called the Lords of Karma. They are called the Lords of Karma because they have to do with dealing with individuals and how they are going to deal with their karma. And so as you go before them, the presence known as the Holy Christ Self, which is the middle figure on the chart, stands with you. Your Holy Christ Self is the mediator between you and the absolute God perfection of the I Am Presence in the upper figure. The Holy Christ Self is your very best friend, your teacher. It is the still small voice of conscience who speaks to you, warns you not to go here, not to go there, to stay away from this person, not to get involved in that relationship or that particular business deal because somehow it's not right for you. Even when you have no reason, that gut feeling that you get is a soul reading and also an inner direction from your Christ presence. So you review this entire life that you have been through, and you observe yourself objectively, sustained by your Christ self, and you are shown the decisions you have made, the consequences of your actions, the good you have done, and what it has brought to the world, and the negatives that you have been involved with that have been a burden to the world. This is real, and I know that your souls know that this is real. We know it is real because we have been through it not once, but many, many times, because we've lived many times before. And so each time it becomes crystal clear. And for any souls who are naturally good and of God, it becomes a moment of great remorse and great desiring to return, to undo the wrongs, to comfort those that we haven't quite given the full measure of kindness to, and to help more people that we could have helped. So we see what is our unfinished business. Perhaps we were embodied to bring forth a certain kind of cure, something through medical science, all kinds of projects that are ongoing. And our lives were cut off by an instance of karma. Karma coming from a previous embodiment, taking us out suddenly. So we haven't been able to finish what we wanted to do. That means we have a great desire to return and finish it, as we all want to finish our projects. And so, after this review, you are assigned to a place in the heaven world or in lower octaves that are not the heaven world that would be commensurate with the karma of the previous life and previous embodiments. You may be assigned to a retreat of an ascended master in the etheric octaves, where you can study to prepare yourself for your soul's next incarnation. This would denote a very high level of service and self-giving, that you could reach those levels. There you would have the opportunity to balance and expand the flame in your heart, which is called the Holy Christ flame. It is the divine spark and the very essence of your life. The expanding of that heart enables us to do greater good, gives us more energy, and brings us into much closer proximity and even bonding to the living Christ. In those etheric retreats, we can invoke the violet flame, we can pray, we can gain self-mastery in the science of the spoken word, which we just did a little of, in calling forth the energies of Archangel Michael and his angels. So there is a certain amount of karma that can be balanced out of the body when you are in the etheric retreats, and so you would be able to do that. But it takes a much longer time, measured against earth time, to balance karma when you are not in physical embodiment. The amount you can balance depends on the nature of the karma and the nature of the person. There is no set formula. Other people, souls who may not be ready for an advanced retreat experience, are assigned to the 3 lowest levels of the etheric octave. There are others that don't even want to go as high as those levels of the etheric octave, which are the beginning of the heaven world. I had a very interesting experience when, at the conclusion of the war in the Middle East, I held a service in Montana in our chapel, and it was packed. About 800 people were there, and I was offering calls for those who had passed on in the war, not only Americans and the Allies, but those from every side, the Iraqis, everyone who had participated, and all those innocent civilians whose lives had been taken. It is necessary that we in embodiment make calls for souls who don't have locomotion and don't have wind in their sails to navigate or to get anywhere when they pass from the screen of life. And this is the danger that we must all be aware of, because there are things we can do about it. We can call to Archangel Michael, as we have just done. We can call to others of the heavenly hosts and ask them to come to those lower planes and cut free those souls so that they can go to a place of rest. What I found was very interesting. I found that the devout people, men and women in the armed forces, those of every nation, who were truly spiritual and had led prayerful lives and devoted lives and had pure hearts, they had already been taken by angels to retreats. Jesus Christ himself has a retreat in the etheric octave over Saudi Arabia. Some of them had such a momentum of light that they were already there. Others were of the light but were not able to get there. So I called to the angels to take them. They welcomed the angels. Some of the very devout Muslims were praying next to their bodies. They couldn't get anywhere past their bodies, but where their dead bodies lay, there they were in prayer on their knees, and they were in perpetual prayer and had been from the moment that they had been killed. But then I saw a most interesting thing. I saw some soldiers, and they were from every different nation, including our own, who had no desire to go into the realms of light, who were very angry that they were killed, and they were expressing that anger in a rage or in cursing or in foul words, and they were putting out a tremendous amount of anger. And so they were not taken to any place of harmony or rest or learning, not only because they were not fit to go there, but because they actually denied the angels who came for them and said that they did not want to go to any place like a retreat of light where they could learn. So these are souls who remain in the lower, what we call the lower astral plane, and they do not have any enlightening or enriching or a spiritual experience before they return to embodiment. And so when they return, nothing has changed, and they continue their lives as they have lived them in their previous embodiment. This reminds us of the passage from the book of Revelation, "He that is filthy, let him be filthy still. He that is holy, let him be holy still." And the teaching is that there is not any sudden change at the moment of transition called death. As we are at the moment of passing, so we are when we behold the other side. And there is no miracle transformation. We do not suddenly become saints in heaven when we have not been and had no inclination to be before. So I am about to describe to you now the place called Devachan, which is the topic of this lecture. And apart from the Devachan that I'm going to describe to you, I would like to say that in the lower levels of the etheric octave, there is actually a kindergarten for souls. And here they learn the ABCs of cosmic law that their teachers and pastors haven't taught them. So putting that realm aside, which is also in the first, second, and third levels of the etheric octave or heaven world, I would like to say that Devachan is a realm where you may experience your unfulfilled desires. Excepting this does not include sensual desires. Your sensual desires or your lower nature and your karma are, so to speak, left at the door of the etheric octave. And I'm going to explain this later. At the point that the soul makes the transition, for whatever reason, the opportunity for the soul to act in the world of cause is closed. Now you have to go to the inner level for which you have fitted yourself. And you are goal fitting right now in this very moment and every day of your life, fitting yourself for where you will be at the end of this journey. You may be assigned to levels of light because you have contributed to the momentums of light on planet Earth. Or you may be assigned to levels of darkness because you have contributed to the momentums of darkness on planet Earth. So as we are when we die, so we are after we die. The verse from Revelation that I quoted to you also says, "He that is unjust, let him be unjust still. And he which is filthy, let him be filthy still. And he that is righteous, let him be righteous still. And he that is holy, let him be holy still." What then does Devachan mean? Devachan is actually a Buddhist term. It means dwelling place of the shining ones. In Buddhism, it is the subjective heaven state in which an individual lives between two earth lives after the death of the gross physical body. In Tibetan Buddhism, Devachan is described as the heaven of the Avalokiteshvara, whom we call Kuan Yin. Avalokiteshvara's paradise is also known as Sukhavati, S-U-K-H-A-V-A-T-I. Sukhavati, the realm of happiness. It is described in the smaller Sukhavati Vyuha as follows. In Sukhavati, there is neither bodily nor mental pain for living beings. The sources of happiness are innumerable there. That world is adorned with 7 terraces, with 7 rows of palm trees, and with strings of bells. It is enclosed on every side, beautiful, brilliant with the 4 gems, gold, silver, beryl, and crystal, with such arrays of excellences peculiar to a Buddha country. Is that Buddha country adorned? The term Devachan is also used in theosophy, but with a slightly different meaning. Theosophy was founded by the masters K.H. and M. in the last century through Madame Blavatsky in about 1875. In the works which she wrote down, she explains that Theosophy sees Devachan as the lower levels of the etheric plane. It says that Devachan is a place of ignorance, where the soul is not even aware that it is not in the physical octave, not, as we say, alive. In a book called The Key to Theosophy, Helena Blavatsky says, Devachan is the idealized continuation of the terrestrial life just left behind, a period of retributive adjustment and a reward for unmerited wrongs and sufferings undergone in that special life. In the Mahatma letters, the Master K.H. says that people bring their good karma into Devachan and leave their bad karma behind. People can reap their good karma in Devachan. He says that Devachan is a reward. It is a state of intense, quote, selfishness, meaning dealing with the self and receiving the rewards that are due to that self, during which an ego reaps the reward of his unselfishness on earth. If you have the good karma to experience such a reward, you can in many cases decide not to experience it. You have the choice to go on to even higher octaves of light if you do not want to spend your time in those lower etheric octaves. Recently, I have been giving courses on a book called A Dweller on Two Planets by a master called Philos, the Tibetan. And in this book, the master Philos, who dictated the book to his amanuensis, defines Devachan as the place where the soul assimilates the fruits of active earth life. This is a state where no one acts, but where the rewards of action in the preceding life are paid. It is the land of Lethe, where there is no pain, sorrow, sickness, or agony, for these earthly conditions were begun on earth, and they, perforce, must be finished on earth. According to both Philos and the Theosophical Society, there are different levels of Devachan. The more advanced souls go to a higher Devachan. Philos says, "Let none suppose that the Devachan of one that hath committed earth-binding errors and must by these bonds again reincarnate is anything like the great life wherewith are crowned those who are faithful unto the death of that serpent in the heart, animal lusts. The lower Devachan is where souls go who are not ready for instruction in the higher octaves. They need to play out desires that they had on earth." Now I would like to put on the blackboard for you a chart. This shows the various realms and octaves of the etheric plane, or the heaven world, and those of the astral world. At the very top of your chart in your notebook, you would put realm of spirit. And this realm is called the nirvana of formlessness. This is kind of a roadmap where you can visualize yourself going in this life and in the next. I'm going to talk to you about the various levels of the etheric octave. The etheric octave is a term that the Ascended Masters give to us. I'm going to show you below that etheric octave a plane which is the physical. The physical octave is a very narrow band of experience. When you think about what we are able to see and experience, you have to realize that it is very narrow. Our eyesight only sees in a certain spectrum, and there is much above and below. Below the physical is the astral. So here we have the etheric plane, and that is what Christians refer to as the heaven world. So the heaven world is actually quite organized. Starting from the lowest to the highest, the etheric octave has 33 levels. They are definite levels and compartments as sealed as is the physical plane in which we live today. So this we said is the physical. The very lowest that I'm putting on the board is the astral plane. So we were just talking about Devachan as well as the kindergarten that is also here. And that's in levels 1, 2, and 3. So the Devachan we're talking about now is these first 3 levels of the etheric plane, and they are the realm of wish fulfillment. And I'm going to tell you the experiences of 3 different individuals from Philos the Tibetan who did experience on this plane. The 5th level is a monastery where an individual in the book of Philos called Semla went. The 7th level of the etheric octave, I have to explain something before I tell you about that. We are living in physical bodies that correspond with a certain wavelength or vibration. The reason we're all here together on this ship of fools, they say, is because we all have a similar karma, we have similar things to do, we all have had need of these bodies that we wear to fulfill our divine plan. Recently I became aware that an evolution functioning at any lower level than the one we are in today could no longer actually make personal contact with a living God. If you look at the lowest of the low of evolutions in the physical earth today, you realize that if they were in any lower vibration, which means more dense, less human-like, more animal-like, they actually would not have the means within themselves to contact God. And so what this awareness gave to me was the realization that we have a tremendous opportunity, because although we are in the lowly estate of the flesh, in bodies that wear out in 70 and so forth, and face many challenges, the one great gift we have is a living contact with God that we can establish and maintain through our individual beings. And this is the grace of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and it is the grace that we reach through His heart and with the help of many saints in heaven that we call ascended masters. So what about other evolutions of the universes and the planetary homes we see who are more advanced than we are, who have overcome war, who have greater spiritual light in their spiritual centers, a closer bonding to the Christ self? I'm not talking about those who are scientifically advanced. I'm not talking about those who just because they can move around in spacecraft and do all kinds of scientific feats. I'm talking about spiritual advancement in their individual self-mastery, where they can do all the cities, but most of all are Christ-like beings. So we have a sister planet where the evolutions have attained to a greater light and a greater beauty, and that is the planet Venus. So talking about level 5, this is a monastery, as I told you, which is mentioned in Philos. But 7 is the level of human life on Venus. So human life on Venus, as Philos says in his book, he doesn't mention what plane they are on, but this was given to me by the Ascended Masters for this lecture. He is saying that this level of human life on Venus can never be perceived by those of us who are from Earth, because it is in another dimension or wavelength. It is 7 steps up from the physical octave as we know it. So all of these planes, all of the 33 steps, have different things that are notable, but I'm just taking a few of them. Some of you have heard of the Tushita heaven, which we studied in Buddhism.
It is the plane where Lord Maitreya abides and where his bodhisattvas are with him. So these are unascended beings who are not in the physical, who are waiting to embody, and it is said that Maitreya may enter this world 500 years after a golden age has begun. Maitreya and his disciples, the bodhisattvas. Now, I spoke to you already about Sukhavati, and Sukhavati is the 12th level of the etheric octave. Each level is increasing in light and vibration. Each is higher than the next, and one cannot go from one to the next without having passed certain initiations and tests. As you know, I do receive dictations from the archangels, the ascended masters, and the cosmic beings. It is from the 18th level that the dictations are given. So when we receive a dictation this evening, the light and the source of that light will come from God from this level, and that is the level in which these beings abide who give their dictations. Now, there are 3 levels here, which I don't have room for, but they're 31, 32, and 33. The highest levels of the etheric plane are the nirvana of form. So there is a nirvana where you retain your form, and there is a nirvana that is without form or formlessness. Now, the astral plane also has 33 levels, but they are in a descending scale. Levels 1 to 7 going down. I suppose you would think of them as limbo or purgatory, but they are levels where there is a heavier karma and where the individual did not sow enough light or increase enough light to be able to go to even the very first heaven world. There was perhaps no centering in God, no worship of God, no acknowledgement of the Supreme Being, no sense of service to God by loving one another and loving one's neighbor. It really doesn't have to do with what your doctrine was. You could be any religion. What it has to do with is how much have you loved. We never get to heaven by our doctrine. We get to heaven by the expression of our love toward life that is a pure love, a love that is not controlling, not deceptive, but simply desires to help others achieve their oneness. So you find people in and out of religion in these lower astral realms, and it has to do with what their deeds have been, because as I said, the physical world is all about deeds. We can think good thoughts all day, and that's helpful, but we have to get out there in the arena of action. So 1 to 7 is a lighter astral plane. When you get to the 8th level, this is the beginning of hell. And hell gets worse as it goes down all the way to the bottom level, 33. Those individuals who are in the very bottom level are individuals who have actually committed crimes against humanity, major crimes involving millions of people or less, but crimes of absolute evil and absolute cruelty. And so they are waiting out their cycles before they face the trial that is described in Revelation in the Last Judgment before the court of the sacred fire and the 4 and 20 elders. Now, what I want to tell you about us and this physical plane is that these planes are overlapping. If you had the ability right now, as an adept, as an unascended master, you could be standing in this room in the same body you are wearing, but have full conscious awareness of these higher octaves and live and move and have your being in those realms of light. At the same time, you could, because of your dedication to darkness, be integrated with the astral plane. If we are perceptive and sensitive to people's auras and vibrations, as we move through the cities of life, through the subways, through various areas. We have a sense when we are around people who are carrying light and who are integrated with this higher level of being. And we have a sense of when we are around those whose vibrations are low and who carry with them not only their low vibrations, but discarnate entities of lower vibrations also. So there are people in the world today who are already integrated with the lower astral planes. They live on the astral plane. Everything they do from in their waking state and their sleeping state is carried on in these lower vibrations. Sometimes this comes about through drug addiction or alcohol addiction, when the body becomes so distended, or what we call yin, that it cannot hold spiritual light or a spiritual flame. And this is the plot against our youth and against our entire nation and the peoples of the whole world. The various addictions that people have, as well as the various chemicals that they take in. Then there is just plain dedication to malice, to malicious mischief, and to making life be a hard time for others. So the physical is the crossroads, and as long as we are in physical embodiment, we can make a decision to make an about face and to divest ourselves of these lower vibrations and enter into the higher vibrations. The method the Ascended Masters have given us to accomplish this has to do with the dynamic decrees, the use of the science of the spoken word. You may have never heard a decree given before that we gave these decrees this evening. You can hear that they're powerful, that they're snappy, that they invoke a lot of energy, that the energy is disciplined, that it is focused, and that it fills a matrix of words of light of that which is desired to be manifest in us. The reason that we have to pray with such power and energy is because the forces of the astral plane are unleashed in the physical world today. And to deal with them, and to deal with demon possession and the burdens that are upon people, you have to speak as Jesus spoke. And they marveled that he did not speak as the scribes, but he spoke as one with authority. And when he gave a command, it was a command, and the demons obeyed. And when he said, "Lazarus, come forth," he said it with tremendous power, so much so that the soul of Lazarus re-entered his body and was restored to life. So that commanding presence is your Christ self, who is with you, who decrees through you. And believe me, it is necessary to extricate oneself from the lower pulls to pray in this manner. And I hope you come to enjoy the process. I would like to equate the terms that the Ascended Masters use with those of traditional Buddhism. Buddhism teaches that there are three realms of existence. Kamaloka, the realm of desire. Here, sexual and other forms of desire predominate. Kamaloka includes the realms of existence of hell, hell beings, naraka, humans, animals, the 6 classes of gods, devas, and of the asuras. Asuras are elementals, that means nature spirits, who have human form. Kamaloka is equivalent to the astral plane. So what I have just termed the astral plane is Kamaloka, K-A-M-A-L-O-K-A. The second is Rupa Loka, R-U-P-A-L-O-K-A. This is the sphere of desireless corporeality or form. Here, desire for sexuality and food falls away, but the capacity for enjoyment continues. This sphere contains the gods dwelling in the dhyana heaven. One can be born into this sphere through the practice of the 4 absorptions. The 4 absorptions are a clearing of the mind in 4 stages through meditation. These lead to the attainment of supernatural powers. Rupa Loka is Devachan. It is the etheric octave. In one sense of the word, the entire 33 planes are Devachan. In another sense, it is the concentration in the first 3 levels I have shown to you. The third is Arupa Loka, A-R-U-P-A, Loka. This is the sphere of bodilessness or formlessness.
It's the spirit cosmos, all the way at the top of the chart. It is a purely spiritual continuum consisting of the four heavens in which one is reborn through practice of the four stages of formlessness. The four stages of formlessness are ways in which to raise oneself into increasingly higher levels of incorporeality. Now I'm going to discuss the process by which the soul enters Devachan. And first I want to define the vehicles of the soul as taught by the Ascended Masters. They have given us these terms, and they've also given terms through the Theosophical Society in the last century. I wanted to point out that the lower figure in the chart, yourself, you have four interpenetrating vehicles of consciousness. You have the physical body that you can see. Then you have your mental body, and that is the cognitive mind of reasoning. Then you have a desire body, which is the body of your desires and emotions. Then the etheric body, the highest vibrating body of the four. These are interpenetrating sheaths of consciousness, and they function as one unit. So we can think, we can remember, we can reason, we can have feelings and physical sensations all at once. But these are actually like interpenetrating colanders or interpenetrating vessels. Just outside the etheric body, we have what is called the etheric double. It's like the skin of all the other vehicles. And that etheric double is where we take the reading of the life force, of levels of degeneration or disease, the timetable of death, whether a person is vital or not vital. It is not the aura. It is simply the etheric double that is also called the astral sheath. So I'm going to give you a diagram of what I have just explained. So on one side we have the theosophical term, and on the other side we have the Ascended Masters term in the Summit Lighthouse, the Ascended Masters term. So the Theosophical Society refers to the rupa, and the rupa is the physical body. Then it talks about prana. The prana is the life or vital principle. It's the spirit or the essence of a person. There is the linga sharira in theosophy, which has to do with the etheric double or the astral shell. It is the astral body, in fact, the linga sharira. So that etheric double is what I was just describing to you. Actually, it is also the astral shell. It is a sheath that serves as the outer skin of the etheric, mental, astral, and physical bodies. Then there is the term, the Kama Rupa, K-A-M-A-R-U-P-A. This is the seat of animal desires or passions. And this we would call the lower etheric body, the lower mental body, the lower desire body, or the lower astral body. So it is the lower nature of the three invisible bodies that I named. This is the center of the animal man, where lies the line of demarcation which separates the mortal man from the immortal entity. This, then, I would like to draw for you. This is a new concept for everyone, and I think it's important that we take a moment to consider it. I was talking to you about the lower figure in the chart being the physical. So I'm drawing that as the smaller and as the center. The invisible bodies are larger bodies. So the next circle or aura of awareness, this would be the physical as shown on the screen. This would be the mental, the next one. Then comes the desire body, which is very large. Our feelings extend from ourselves tremendously and influence every part of life. Feelings of love that we radiate can be felt throughout the planet, throughout the city. So this is the desire body, and this is the body that is most out of control. Then the etheric body is the body of memory, and it carries the blueprint of your life. It carries the image and likeness of God in which you were made, and then it carries the lower images that you have created about yourself, images of limitation. So what is new about this teaching is that I'm telling you that the Kama Rupa, the seat of animal desires, is the lower half of the etheric body, the lower half of the mental, the lower half of the desire. So if you actually would draw a line through this, basically centered in the physical body, you would find that the animal nature, the lower nature, is centered in the lower half of the etheric body, the lower half of the desire body, the lower half of the mental body, and the lower half of the physical. What divides our bodies in half is that heart chakra, that blazing sun of light that we visualize. And so things that are negative and of the lower nature tend to gravitate toward the lower half of ourselves. So what the Ascended Masters have taught us to diagram in the lower half is what we call the electronic belt. And the electronic belt is diagrammed in this part of the self as a kettle drum, just like a drummer would be drumming on a giant kettle drum. And in that kettle drum, you will find the repository of the records of karma. It is the place of the subconscious and of the unconscious records. And that is the negative karma, and that is the bottom end of the spectrum. When I said that we are at the lowest place of the physical cosmos and the highest of the spirit, that electronic belt is all of the negatives that you sow daily, and they collect and they become a heavy weight, whereas, as I said, that which we qualify with light rises to increase the causal body above. So the upper half is not considered the Kama Rupa, but only the bottom, that is the seat of the desires and passions. The fifth level that we're going to talk about, the theosophical term, is Manas. M-A-N-A-S. This relates to mind, intelligence, the higher human mind whose light or radiation links the monad for the lifetime to the mortal man. This is what the masters call the Holy Christ Self, the middle figure on the chart on the screen, Manas. So this Holy Christ Self, that is number 5, that is the mediator. That is your real self. It is also called the higher mental body or the higher consciousness. And this is that which links the lower self or the soul to the I Am Presence, the mediator, the middle figure. Jesus Christ is the mediator between God and man, and that same Christ presence with us is our individual mediator. It includes the higher etheric body, the higher mental body, and the higher desire body. So that was the top half of the diagram I drew on the other side of the chart. So the highest portion of your etheric body is filled with that Christ. The highest portion of your mental body is filled with the Christ, and the highest portion of the desire body. Now you have to will that so. It's not automatic. You can choose to fill all of your 4 lower bodies with nothing but darkness, but that is the vessel that is intended to carry the Holy Christ Self. The next theosophical term which we relate is Buddhi, the spiritual soul, B-U-D-D-H-I. And that is the spiritual soul
And what that relates to is the causal body, the body of first cause. And those spheres of light are that causal body. You have a causal body above you. It contains all the good works that you have ever done since you first took your very first incarnation somewhere in the matter universe. It is a replica of the causal body of God in the great central sun. Yours is what you have made of the potential that God gave you in the beginning. This combined with number 7, the Atma, this is the causal body. Relates to the I am that I am, the I am presence that is centered in the causal body, the upper figure in the chart. So the causal body is actually the dwelling place or the house of the I am presence. You see the I am presence is this figure in white at the top, surrounded by the spheres of light. The two of them put together are known in Theosophy as the Atma Buddhic monad. Atma Buddhic monad. So that is the great God Self, and that causal body is the goal to which your soul will return. There are elements of our being that God has placed in the very bodies that we wear, the physical, mental, desire, and etheric. The soul, for instance, resides in the seat of the soul chakra. That chakra is located between the navel and the base of the spine. That is the place where you make the connection to your soul. That is the place where you have a gut reaction of feeling good or bad about things. And that is where the soul has its perceptions, its psychic perceptions, its sixth sense, its intuitions. Then you have a seed atom. The seed atom is one with your spirit. Your spirit is different from your soul. The seed atom with the spirit resides at the point of the thymus. The thymus is right here at a place in your chest that you can feel a slight elevation. It is below the throat chakra and it is above the heart chakra. That is the seed atom and the spirit. God has given to you the sacred fire of the Divine Mother. It is the Kundalini. It is a coil of sacred fire that is located in the base of the spine chakra, that is at the point of the tailbone. The fourth gift of God that you have in this temple is the threefold flame, the divine spark. This is located in the antechamber of the heart chakra. You have a heart chakra that has 12 petals, and behind it is an 8-petal chakra where this spiritual flame of life burns. And it is connected to the physical body. So these elements of God, our Father, Mother, God, have been placed with us in these lower forms so that we would always have a connection through our soul, through our spirit with the seed atom, through the Kundalini, and through the threefold flame. When you think of the wonder of God that He could encase in bodies of clay, an essence, a portion of that which is of the spiritual fire. It is such a glorious conception. I've explained to you what the astral shell or ka is. It is outside of those 4 levels and is like a skin. It's not the etheric body, although it's called the etheric double. And as I've said, you can read the health, the energy, the mood, the strength of the life force of the life stream. It's actually a duplicate of your physical self, as your physical self is now, rather than as it might be in the perfected level of the Christ self. The circumstances of your life can be read from it, as I said, levels of degeneration, disease, and the timetable of death. So that etheric double shows you the ongoing mathematical equation of your physical, emotional, and mental bodies. The emotional is another word for astral. When you reach the perfected state or even the mastery of an embodied adept, you no longer have an astral shell. So let's consider the steps that happen to the individual at the change called death. The physical body ceases to function. The prana, or vital principle, exits the body. That is the essence, or the point of the thymus where that spirit abides, and returns to the plane of first cause. The astral shell begins a decay process, and I'm going to tell you more about this later. The Kama Rupa separates from the three higher principles. The Manas goes to the etheric octave. The Buddhi remains in the plane of first cause. The Atma remains in the plane of first cause. The human soul must determine where to go. Theosophy teaches that there is a period of time between death and entry into Devachan. It calls it the gestation period. During this time, the soul is magnetized either up or down. If the soul has lived a generally good life, she enters Devachan. The Kamarupa, including all of the soul's negative karma, is sealed. It awaits the soul's return from Devachan. If the soul has completely neglected spirituality, she is in danger of being attracted to the Kamarupa. If she remains with the Kamarupa, she is not sealed. She is subject to malevolent spirits and may be drawn down into the black vortices of the astral plane and be lost. Helena Blavatsky describes this process in Isis Unveiled, quote, "If during life the ultimate and desperate effort of the inner self to reunite itself with the faintly glimmering ray of its divine parent is neglected, if this ray is allowed to be more and more shut out by the thickening crust of matter, the soul, once freed from the body, follows its earthly attractions and is magnetically drawn into and held within the dense fogs of the material atmosphere. Then it begins to sink lower and lower until she finds herself, when returned to consciousness after the gestation period, in what the ancients termed Hades. The annihilation of such a soul is never instantaneous. It may last centuries, perhaps." That's the end of the quote from Theosophy. The Ascended Master's teaching on this subject is that souls can be liberated from the astral plane if we who are in embodiment will invoke the angelic hosts and ask them to descend into the astral plane to rescue them. You may ask, well, why do we have to ask the angels to do this? Why don't they do it without our asking them? Why do you need prayer? It is because the angels and the archangels are native to the highest etheric octaves and to the very highest level of the state of the spirit cosmos and the formless nirvana. If they are to descend into our world where God has given to us free will and dominion over that world, they must be in fact authorized or invoked by those of us who live here. They cannot simply enter our realm and interfere with the karma that we have because we have free will. This is why many religions have prayers for the deceased. Catholics have wakes, which are intended to be a series of prayers that the soul can go to higher realms. The Egyptian Book of the Dead teaches the same. I'd like to give to you now some descriptions of Devachan from a dweller on 2 planets. Philos lived on Atlantis about 13,000 BC. He was a man named Zalem, and he died of hunger and thirst after being trapped in an ancient, abandoned prison in Peru. These are the words that he uses to describe his situation. This is a very important teaching I'm about to give because it's the description of someone who's been to Devachan and a description of 2 others who have also been there. These are Philo's words after he discovers that he is dead and he is no longer in his physical body. Nothing seemed strange to me, not even when I arose and found that behind me as a shell remained the poor clay casket which had suffered so keenly under the pangs of starvation. All was as natural in seeming as are things in vivid dreams. I thought of Anzame and wondered if she too felt as happy as I did at that moment. Anzame is Philos' twin flame who is alive on Atlantis. Zalem realizes that he is dead. Now you might think that death is an instantaneous awareness, but I've seen people at the scene of accidents, sudden accidents that come to people of all ages, where they have remained at the scene of the accident for weeks, trying to figure out what has happened to them, or to make the car start, or to get into their physical body. And of course those things are removed, and they will still be there, totally in a state of mind of bewilderment and not able to navigate, and truly at the mercy of those on earth praying that they might be delivered by angels, and of making calls to angels to come and take them to higher planes. So by and by, at some point, everyone realizes that he is no longer in this world, but it is not necessarily instantaneous. So I wanted to point that out to you. Zalem says, "It was much different from my concepts because it apparently differed not at all from earth life, so far as I had as yet experienced it." But Zalem is not omniscient. And I think we have to realize, as I mentioned before in the quote from Revelation, we do not become suddenly omniscient once we pass from the screen of life. We know just about as much as we knew before we passed on. So Zalem too is limited by his karmic condition, and that limits us when out of the body as surely as when we are in the body. So Philos says, "Death brings no startling changes and does not invest the soul born into the hereafter with any wonderful power of foresight. Filled with these feelings, I stepped to the door, forgetting that its lock had previously prevented my exit. Only when it opened at my touch did I remember that it had defied every previous effort." He died in a cave where a prison had been built. The door had shut tight on him, and he had no way to get out, and so he died of thirst and starvation and was there several weeks in the process. Lightly I stepped away down the tunnel until I came to the daylight and to my saddle and tools, and yes, my horse, faithful animal. He was eating of the grasses and evidently made the overflowing waters at the generator his headquarters. Leave him? Not if I could avoid it. I was free at last. I looked around at the dry washes lying under the open sky, with their eroded monuments of clay, capped with wild pampas plumes. How gracefully these nodded in the light breeze, seeming to say, "Free now, free." Then I went to my horse to take him, forgetful that being dead I could not need such transportation. But he seemed not to see me or to know my presence. This was a difficulty. I was used to conquering difficulties, but this was one where I was at a loss as to what to do. I sat down and looked at the handsome animal. The longer I looked, the more perplexed I became. At last I got up in a sort of exasperation and talked very earnestly to the animal. No effect, of course not. The more I talked, the more contented the horse became, as if he felt that I was near and was satisfied. Finally I started away, intending to leave him, since I could in no way influence him. This had a great effect. The farther I got, the more uneasy he became, as I was able to see, until at last he lifted up his head and neighed loudly. Once, twice, thrice, and then he started after me in a wild gallop. When he reached me, he grew easy, but as I went rapidly onwards, he followed. He was awake to a sense of my presence, though he could not see, feel, or hear me. My mind was wholly occupied in getting this faithful servant to the camp. So, feeling no fatigue, nor hunger, nor thirst, nor any sensation of the physical life, I walked clear into camp all those miles, with that horse following contentedly after. Now Zalem was able to influence his horse during the window of time between the moment of death and the entry into Devachan. In this time, a person can act as a ghost or spook. The astral shell can also act as a ghost after the soul has gone into Devachan, if it is not bound or transmuted. So the story continues. When we reached the camp, the Velks, which is an airship, was there. But only 2 of the men, the others having gone in search of me, since I was now overdue in my arrival. These men, like the horse, could not see me, but unlike him, neither could they sense my nearness. My utmost efforts were entirely unsuccessful, and although I stayed on for 2 days until the search was over and the men had returned to the Velks to obtain further orders from Kaiful, the capital of Atlantis, I was unsuccessful still. One of the hunters was still out, and when he came back, I spoke to him. He could not see me, but my presence affected him strangely. So I spoke again and again, till at last he sat down, trembling by my desk in the salon of the Velks. A paper and a pen and ink were in this, and I said to the man, "Use that pen." To my partial surprise, he used it, but seemed in a deep sleep the while, and mechanically wrote, "Use that pen." An idea occurred to me, and I uttered words which had no connection of meaning, every one of which he wrote, just as I spoke it. This was encouraging, so I next said, "It is I, even Zalem, who say these things. I am dead. Go home to Kaiful." What I spoke in dictation was all written, not that the medium heard, but for the time I was the controlling intelligence of his body. The others took the message and hid it, and when the writer had come out of a trance, they asked him what he had written. But he denied having written anything. This seemed to satisfy them. The man was so obviously honest in his denial. So they went and gathered the equipage and animals into the Velks and prepared to leave for Kaiful. So I've just read to you an example of channeling. Zalem is a dead person. He is not omniscient. But since he is not yet departed to the etheric realm, he can still communicate with those on earth. Zalem then returns to Kaiful, the capital of Atlantis. He does this by saying to himself, "I would be at home," and suddenly he is at home in the palace of the emperor. Anzame, his twin flame, is with the emperor. Zalem expects the emperor Wallen to be able to see him and talk to him, since the Rai Wallen is a high adept. Wallen can see him, but he pretends not to be able to. He doesn't want to interfere with Zalem's journey to Devachan. He knows that communication with departed spirits can cause the spirit to lose vital essence and become trapped in lower octaves. Now that's a very important point and principle of the Ascended Master's teachings, which is why we do not enter into spiritualism or into channeling. Because if we are approached by a departed spirit or the astral ka of that spirit, in order for that person to communicate with us or to channel through someone to us or through ourselves, it has to expend its energy. And in the process, it may use up also some of the substance of our own etheric double. So it is dangerous for both parties. The ancients knew this and had this wisdom. And so this great adept, who was the emperor at this time, would not acknowledge Zalem and draw him into communication at that level. So as Zalem stands beside the Emperor Wallen in the palace, his earthly powers begin to leave him. Life on earth fades away. It is replaced by Zalem's dream world. Philos writes, the scene at the palace was replaced by glorious sights and sounds akin to the daydreams of the life just left. It was peopled with the children of my fancy, my experiences, my hopes, longings, aspirations, and my conceptions of persons, places, and things. No two people see in the same way the same world. The heaven, the Devachan of one person is filled with his concepts of life, while that of his neighbor on either side, so to speak, is peopled with other peculiar mental properties. I had no clear idea of any event of the old life in Poseid, Atlantis. No memory of death, nothing. All had gone, like the events of some dream which we strive in vain to recall at breakfast the next morning. And yet when I came across things in the new state similar to those known and loved in the old, when I found things here such as I had been wont to dream of someday carrying to realization, then the new realities, which after all were not new, seemed wholly satisfactory, with the added charm of achievement, though I could not recall the old. End of Zalem's quote. Zalem begins his experience in Devachan by living for a time in a stone house in a beautiful valley with his father. Now that has an interesting reason, because Zalem has an unfulfilled desire to know his father and to be with him. He never knew his father in his previous life, his life as Zalem. So the people he meets in Devachan are not real people, but his conception of those people. Philos explains it. My supposed friend may be a real enemy, yet if I die thinking him or her my friend, that concept is the one carried into the afterlife, and vice versa. However, a soul in Devachan can know and associate with real egos if those people are also in the Devachanic realm or are advanced souls able to project themselves there. The Rai Wallen and Anzame are such advanced souls. They project themselves into his Devachan, his dream world. The Rai Wallen explains why he refused to see him when he appeared in his palace. Zalem also spends much time with his friends from Kaiful, and most of all with Anzame. After he had done everything he could conceive of to do in his world, Zalem began to tire of it. At length there came a time when I cared no more for the appearance of action, nor for those concepts of persons, places, or things connected with seeming activity. Chiefly now I cared to remain in some quiet spot and listen to Anzame, the real, not the concept, as she read to or talked with me. I slept much also. One morning I did not arise. I did not care to. I was not ill. No one ever knew illness in Devachan. But I had lost all desire to see or hear more of anything. I did indeed feel languor, but not weariness. So I turned over again, facing the wall, and slept. Now you can see the real reason why God provides for us, if we need it, a place called Devachan. It is the need to fulfill our desires. Gautama Buddha told us that desires propel us, and they propel us back into life. Unfulfilled desires. If we can fulfill and live out some of those desires in those first 3 levels of the etheric octave, the heaven world, that means that they will have been fulfilled by the time we re-embody. We may come back having learned a great deal from fulfilling them. We might be a better person. We might have learned a certain attainment in various fields, engineering, mining, geology, whatever is our inclination. So it's a preparation, and it's also a fulfillment. Unfulfilled desires are very troublesome, and they burden the psyche and create very deep psychological problems in all of us. So Zalem has lived through his desires, and he wants no more of them. He is satisfied. He has come to that point of neutrality, and so he goes into this sleep. He writes, "It was the last occurrence in the last chapter of a life's long rest, which, though I knew it not, had covered 12,000 years of the actions of men on earth. I was ready for activity once more. I slept, and in this sleeping died out of that life of passivity into the waking of earth, a babe in a cradle." That is the gentle story that may be the story of your life and may take you to where you were long ago or recently, through a realm of peace and happiness that the Father, Mother God has provided for us, to the place where you have returned to accomplish a very important assignment in this life on this continent.